we're switching it up today to hot coffee because I decorated this mug. I went to a pottery place for my birthday, and this is the mug that I designed. I'm in love. Also, I realized after the fact that it kind of looks like a bunch of cacti. That was not what I was going for. Hello everyone, and welcome back to my channel. If you are new here, hi, my name is Liz, and today we are going to be talking about the books I read in March. So a March wrap up, if you will. I am so incredibly happy with all the books that I read this month. I did have a few that were not as good as I was expecting, but I did have a lot of new authors and books that I read that I actually was pleasantly surprised with. So I'm really excited to talk about those books with you guys today and just share some of my thoughts. So let's get on into the video. So the first book I read in the month of March and finished was House of Flame and Shadow by Sarah J. Maas. This is the third book in the Crescent City series that is ongoing at the moment. I have really enjoyed this series. I finished the first and second one at the end of February, so I was really excited to start this one at the beginning of March, and it did not disappoint. I ended up rating this one at 4.5 stars. This is a thick book. I just want to point that out because when I was going through this book, the reason why it wasn't a full 5 stars was because it had a huge info dump. Like the entire book was just information thrown at you about just all of the inner workings of this fantasy world that you're in and also other fantasy worlds. And it was just very hard to keep track in my mind at times. It felt like I was in a history class for a good portion of this book. Not that that's a bad thing. However, that is what ultimately made me not give it a full 5 stars. There were also certain plot points that the second book kind of led you on, and I had really high hopes for where the story was going to go with certain characters, and I just felt like a few of those different plot points didn't go the direction I thought they were going to go in. They kind of disappointed me a little bit. I think maybe because I just had such high expectations for what was going to happen. Not that what ended up happening was bad. It made sense for the storyline why it did what it did. That kind of rubbed me the wrong way. That's why another reason why it was not a full 5 stars. However, on the bright side, I absolutely loved this book. I thought the pacing was great. Once again, it is a huge book, and that can be very hard to do as an author. I feel like with some of these larger fantasy novels, I feel like it's really easy to kind of have a lot of lulls throughout the story, but I feel like this one had so many characters, so many side characters that were doing different things, going on different quests that fit along with the story. And I felt like that kind of helped the story move along quicker than what it would have if it was only told from one point of view. However, once again, it bounced around to a lot of different side characters, and I'm so happy it did. I loved the side characters in this book. The side characters honestly made this book what it was. It was done so well. I really cared for all of those characters, and the ending with this, it felt very complete. I feel very satisfied with the ending of this book. It also had the Sarah J. Maas layer of the ending where the climax of the story gave me chills. I literally cried at the end of this book, and it takes a lot to make me cry when I read books, but Sarah J. Maas just knows how to do that. She knows how to pull at my heartstrings. The next book I read was The Long Game by Elena Armas. I ended up giving this a 5 stars. I absolutely loved the story and the characters in it. It felt so fast paced, and I just binged it so fast because I just loved the world that you were in. I loved the characters. It gave me butterflies when I was reading it. I felt like all of the characters were just so well-rounded and so charming that made me just smile while I was reading their story. And I also felt like the 2 main characters, their romance was so genuine. They got off on the wrong foot, but I feel like you could see how the story progressed and see the different things that they were both going through. I could tell that they were slowly falling in love, and it felt very natural. And I also really loved that the male main character, you could definitely tell he fell first, and I just loved watching him show the main character how much she meant to him and how much he truly did love her. And next I read The Locked Door by Freida McFadden. I ended up giving this book 4 stars. So once again, Freida McFadden, she's just so good at mystery thrillers. I really need to keep reading her books. I've only read a handful, and every single one has not disappointed me. All of them have been so incredibly good. This book was very fast paced. It was a then and now timeline. I was a little bit disappointed with the plot twist at the end because I think I was expecting something a little bit more grand than what happened. However, However, I still really enjoyed the writing and the story overall. The story follows a girl whose father was arrested and sent to prison for being a serial killer when she was younger, and it is now many years later. She is now a doctor herself. Now there is a copycat. Someone is killing their victims in the same way that her father killed his victims. So it does the then and now timeline, which I found was really interesting. I really liked seeing the then timeline when she was younger with her father in the house. You could see just some of the red flags that really pointed towards him being a serial killer. It honestly felt like I was watching a Criminal Minds episode. The next book I'm going to talk about really disappointed me because this is a very popular book talk book. So many people have talked about it and it was not for me. And that is A Million Kisses in Your Lifetime by Monica Murphy. Once again, it has a sticker that says as seen on TikTok. But this book, I ended up giving it 2.5 stars. 2.5 stars, which isn't horrible, but it's also not good. Mainly because I felt like the story was very juvenile. The characters are set in high school. They're at a prep school, and it's like the popular boy whose family owns this prep school academy, and the girl is like the perfect girl, the it girl at the school who everyone wants to be. But it just really rubbed me wrong because the characters were so shallow. And what I mean by that is it very much centered on the girl's virginity. Yes, you heard that right. The girl is like one of the only virgins left in the school. The guy is so set on taking her virginity, and I hated that. And everyone was making fun of her for being a virgin. And it's like, when you're in high school, that is not a big deal. I don't think that's a big deal. I just felt like there's so much emphasis on her being a virgin. Like, it just talked so much about the physical that I didn't really see how they were able to form an actual love connection throughout this book. It seemed like all the characters cared about was talking about sex. And I don't know, it just didn't feel like this belonged in a high school. Like, maybe if this was a college, yes, but this did not feel like a high school that they were all a part of. It just didn't feel like the story had too much substance, and it just wasn't for me. The next book I read was The Collective by Allison Galen. This one I ended up giving a 3 stars, so pretty solid average rating for me. And I did really enjoy the story. I feel like, however, at the time when I was reading it, I wasn't super connected with the story. Not that it had anything to do with the story. I feel like I was going through a mini book slump when I was reading this book. It just took me a really long time to read it, even though it's not that long of a book. Like, it was only 300 pages. So it wasn't like a huge book, but it just felt like it took me a really long time to get through this story. It was very fast paced, which I know kind of goes against what I just said. The main character is a mother whose daughter died when she was in high school, and she blames this boy who's very rich and has a very wealthy family, well connected, on her death because it's kind of like a he said, she said situation. However, her daughter is obviously dead and cannot defend herself. It did not go their way in court, sadly. So the mother, it's many years later, she still holds this kind of vendetta against this boy and his family because they ruined her and her family. However, this group of women contacts the mother in the story and kind of invites her into their group, where it's basically on the dark web for moms who all have lost children some way. This group is called The Collective, and they will go and kill your child's murderer for you, so that way it in no way is attached to you. And at first, the mother in the story, she thinks it's all a game, like it's make-believe. However, she finds out pretty quickly that everything is real, and this is very scary, very dark. This book did give me chills. I was very satisfied with the ending. I could see this happening. So the only reason why I gave it 3 stars was just because, once again, I didn't feel very connected to the story, but that's mainly on me. I think other people would probably enjoy this way more than I did, just because I was going through a book slump. And next, we have I'll Always Be With You by Monica Murphy. This is in the same universe as A Million Kisses in Your Lifetime. It's still at the same prep school, same kind of connections. You do get glimpses of some of the characters from A Million Kisses in Your Lifetime in this book. I ended up giving this a 3 stars, which is slightly better than the first one, which I only gave 2.5 stars. Once again, it just felt like kind of your average love story. Still, characters very much so relied mainly on the physical. It didn't really feel like they were getting to know each other as a person. It was more so just lust. The timeline does jump around a little bit, which didn't really bother me. It follows our main characters, who one is a ballerina. She's the one whose family owns the prep school, and she's always gone to school in Europe or something. And the guy in here, he's like the popular boy at the prep school. However, the girl, some things happen while she's at her ballet school and she ends up getting transferred back to the prep school. They met each other whenever he was traveling for, I think, summer break, and they had like a great night together, and then it was over and he was going back, and I don't know. I just felt like the couple was just very average. I didn't really feel their connection like I feel like I could have, once again, because they only focused on the physical. So I'm gonna give it a 3 because that's just kind of average. It was a decent story, but it wasn't anything crazy. Next up, we have A Promise of Fire by Amanda Boucher. This was a fantasy book that I really enjoyed. I ended up giving this a 4.5 stars. So our main character, she is what's known as a kingmaker. So she can tell when someone is lying to her. So she is very valuable to any sort of royal family in that she can decide or decipher who is for the crown and who is against it. She has been on the run for many years. She's actually working in a circus now as a kind of fortune teller, which totally fits. She's basically in hiding, and while she's traveling with the circus, she meets this warlord who just recently took over a territory. He has been searching for her, and he knows exactly who she is when he meets her. And our warlord ends up kidnapping her from the circus. So you can tell that they are very much enemies to lovers because he forces her against her will to leave her family that she's made in the circus to go travel with him to his city. And I really enjoyed this book. I really loved the couple because it felt like a true enemies to lovers book, and it was done really well. Very fast paced. Loved the side characters. The side characters are what made this book for me. And I also really liked just the fantasy world you were in. It is very much about Greek mythology. So if you know all about like Athena, Ares, Zeus, like those different gods and goddesses, it talks a lot about those gods and goddesses in here. It kind of felt like a history lesson in Greek mythology, which I found very interesting. Our main character, she very much reminded me of the Throne of Glass main character, which is my all-time favorite fantasy series. So that also definitely helped when I was reading this story. I was very much looking forward to the rest of the series. This was the first book in a 4-book series that I think is still ongoing. And the next book I read was Breath of Fire, which is the second book following in that fantasy world. I actually only gave this one a 3.75 stars. The reason why is I felt like it just didn't live up to my expectations from the first book. I really liked the first book and the slow burn and everything. But this one, I felt like the beginning was very abrupt. Like there were certain things that happened that didn't really have any build up. Like it felt like it just was kind of thrown at you within the first few chapters. And I found that kind of shocking. I thought it would be built into the storyline a little bit more, but it was more so just like, here you go. I also didn't feel as connected to the story in this book. I felt like I wasn't as connected to the two main characters as much as I was in the first story. Still really loved the side characters. They are what kept me going in this series, was the side characters. Lots of different plot points happen, lots of different events happened in this book, which I found it also helped with the storyline. However, once again, I didn't feel as connected as I feel like I could have been, and I didn't feel like it flowed as well as the first book, but still very good. Still really wanted to continue with the series. And after that book, I kind of needed a break from that fantasy world. I needed something that could keep me going so I didn't go into a book slump. So I went ahead and picked up Happily Never After by Lynn Painter. 5 stars. I love this book. Lynn Painter does it again. I had such high hopes for this book and it did not disappoint me. The coupleness was everything. Their just banter back and forth was just so incredibly funny, and just they had the best friendship. And I love that in books. I love it when the couple starts out as friends and builds on that foundation together. Their friendship was so just genuine and heartfelt, and it felt like they truly knew each other as a person, and they were so good at communicating. I feel like that's something that lacks in a lot of romance books, is the communication. I hate it when there's miscommunication at the end. Like that is the dumbest thing ever. But I feel like they were really good at communicating. They were also adults, so you should be a good communicator at almost 30 years old. Like to me, that's a no-brainer. I mean, it makes sense if you're in high school and you miscommunicate, but you're an adult. You should know how to talk to another adult about your feelings or your thoughts or your opinions. The story was very fast-paced, very easy to binge read. I think I finished this within a day and I loved it. I loved every single second of that day. It was also a really great story about recovering from heartbreak and also learning how to love again and take a chance on a new relationship or a new friendship. And I will definitely reread this in the future. This book follows our main character who, it starts and she's at her wedding and she doesn't want to marry the guy that she's getting married to because she found out he cheated on her not once but twice. She wants to get out of it. However, the father, I think, of the groom is her dad's boss. So if she ended the wedding, it would not look good for her dad. She ends up hiring an objector, which is where our male main character comes in. And so after her failed wedding attempt, she's ready to move on and she ends up striking up this friendship with her objector and she ends up getting in on it. She wants to become an objector as well, and he actually gets paid to do what he does. So she ends up going along the ride with him, and they both go to different weddings. And I just love the atmosphere of weddings. I love it when a book follows a couple in like a wedding season. I think it's just so fun. I love the just different stories you can get from a wedding and the different drama that always happens. And then after that book, I was ready to get back into my fantasy world. So I picked up the third book, and this is Heart of Fire by Amanda Boucher. This is the third book in the Kingmaker Chronicles that I was just talking about. And this one I ended up giving a 3.5 stars. So not as good as the second book. I did still enjoy it. However, I just felt like this book, the ending was very rushed. And once again, I didn't feel fully connected to some of the main characters in this book, but the side characters just, I love these side characters so much. They are just so good, and I'll get into it in a little bit, but it felt very similar to the second book in that there were a lot of events, a lot of things that were happening. However, I just felt very disconnected to the story, and it didn't feel like it all flowed as well as the first and second book. And the ending did feel very, very rushed. Like there were certain things that happened that I thought the ending would take 100 pages, but it only took like 30, which when it's a fantasy world and there's a war going on and things, it should never take 30 pages to do your ending. That's like your climax of the story. That should be the longest part of the story. And last but not least, I read the fourth book, which is A Curse of Queens. And this one I ended up giving a 4 stars. I really, really, really enjoyed this book, mainly because instead of it following our 2 main characters from the first 3 books, this actually followed 2 of my favorite side characters. So I loved it from start to finish. You definitely got like little hints of throughout the other 3 books of these 2 side characters, and I knew they would just be amazing if they had their own book, and they were. So this still follows the same story, however, from 2 side characters' perspectives, and they end up having to go on their own quest separate from the rest of the group. The other side characters are still in it, and it ended in a way where I know this is an ongoing series. There will be other books, and I'm hoping they're from the other side characters' perspectives as well, because I just feel like it's so refreshing getting a different viewpoint. Like I really liked the 2 main characters from the first 3. However, I was getting tired of them, and I could tell. That's why I kept saying I love the side characters, and I'm so happy that I was able to get inside their heads and see them have their own story. We'll definitely be continuing on with the rest of the series. Time to lift the book stack. And that is it for today's video. I hope you guys enjoyed. This was fun. I always love doing my wrap-ups because I get to reflect back on all the books that I read that month. And I really love just getting to relive some of my thoughts and feelings on some of these books. And I feel like I discovered some really good books this month, and I'm really looking forward to April. I have some great books in the lineup, and I can now buy books again. So you know I'm gonna be thriving this month, I think. If you guys enjoyed this video, please like, comment, subscribe, all those YouTube things that you know how to do. And I will see you guys in my next video. Happy reading. Bye.